On Flow FM, another summer song series with Clayton.
And joining us on Flow, it is great to welcome Bill McDonough, and we're going to be talking about, well, some old gigs. If you love your rock and roll, if you're of my age, folks, as some of you know, we're on the other side of 50. Some of these artists that we're going to be talking about in some of these shows, you may have either been at or you may remember the time and the tours, as I'm certainly getting some flashbacks. But Bill's going to tell us all about it, and there's a special reason why. So Bill McDonough, welcome to Flow. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
So I'm looking at the AustralianRoadCrew.com.au website, and especially into this the Black Box Records, the desk tape series. Now, I've worked with, I should put out there that I was a roadie some many years ago, and one of the sound guys that I worked with, he always recorded the band. He just had boxes of tapes forever recording. So is this what we're talking about? Is this the front of house mixes that we're talking about here?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, It used to be the case with Australian Crawl. Our sound engineer, a guy called Rocket, Gary Fox, he'd always have a desk tape going, and we used to use it, to reflect on how the gig went and how we played and which songs were working and which weren't. And but in particular, the one that we've got on this desk tape series for the Australian Road Crew Association charity, it was recorded at a nightclub with its own front of house system, and that was Billboard in Melbourne. So our desk tape out of that gig is quite superior than if it were just off, the mix desk.
Wow. Just bringing back some memories. Sorry, I'm just getting some flashbacks here as I'm talking to you, Bill, because I haven't thought about this for a long time, and I'm looking at some names up here, and I'm going, I remember working with him. So
yes.
I'm seeing some of this. So, but as you mentioned there, charity, and this is, I guess what folks don't understand is that if there's no gigs, the roadies are not working, and we've had that for the last couple of years, and I do know some guys have really been doing it tough, but this is one way to try and help them through the music that we all love, that many of us went to see. So the charity is so important.
Yeah, look, you're right. The Australian Road Crew Association, ARCA, was formed to specifically look after road crew and backstage people, the people that work their guts out to put the shows on. And a lot of people don't realise how much work and how tiring and how many long days and long weeks these guys and women, there are a few women involved, even back in the 80s, they worked terribly hard, and they didn't earn that, that amount of money that would probably see them with a vast amount of savings. It was for the love of life on the road and working with rock and roll. And, because they were self-employed, they didn't have, things like superannuation.
It wasn't heard of. You didn't do it,
No, so as they've grown older and, physically beyond their abilities to, roadie, some of them have found it pretty tough going, and this is what the charity's all about. This is what the desk tapes are all about.
And
it's about raising some cash that can go back to some of these guys and girls that, that are in need.
And it's not just from the injuries that some of us, and I've got a shoulder one that still bothers me from time to time, but for some it's also their mental health as well, and looking after them on that side of it. So it covers all aspects, and that's why it's so important. And I know it's linked through to Support Act as well. So this is very important to do this and looking after our roadies, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant way of doing this. And also for those of us who are not aware of it, to reminisce about that time. I reckon it was a great seeing bands back in the 80s back in the days when you could smoke in the pub, which I'm not encouraging by any means, but you know what I mean. It was back in those days, and the bands were it was just great to see, and looking at some of the ones on here.
I really miss it. I don't understand why it disappeared. We had such a vibrant music scene.
Yeah.
And that's why we produced world-class acts in the 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s.
Yeah.
Because we had the venues and the live music that allowed the bands to develop, to get out, get gigs and grow as bands and end up really strong recording acts like In Excess and Australian Crawl and Cold Chisel and Midnight All those bands started out of the Australian pub scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the gigs were huge. You could go to, a gig 4-5 nights a week if you wanted to and see a quality act and a quality show. I mean, these, the shows that we put on were pretty spectacular.
Yep.
I mean, I remember touring with 2 semi-trailers and a crew of about 8, with a full concert light rig, the whole works. When we hit the stage, it was quality sound, quality effects, light show, the whole works.
I can remember some front of house guys that when they had the big semi of all the gear, their philosophy was, we don't care what size the room is, it all goes in. And just some of the rooms, mate, how are you going to fit this PA in? Find a way. And I tell you what, back then we did. We found a way to fit everything in, and I've seen light guys and all the lights. And I used to feel sad for some of you guys, especially you drummers up on the back there, because it was like you were getting permanent suntans.
Oh, I've got to tell you a story. We were doing a concert tour where we were dragging 2 Pantecs, 2 semi-trailers around the country, and we were doing, big concerts in theatres, and then we went into regional towns and we were doing like town halls, and then, raceways and speedways. So we dragged a stage with a full concert lighting rig and then all the concert sound gear in 2 semis. And then our management decided, let's throw in a couple of pub gigs in Melbourne on the way through to, New South Wales. And my lighting guy decides he's going to hang one of the concert bars in this pub about 2 inches off my head. And that night, I actually ended up in Frankston Hospital, with kidney stones. He fried me.
Yeah, I don't mean to laugh, but yeah.
Yeah, the salts in my kidneys crystallised and passed as stones, and I was in agony. And Derek Palici had to sit in for me, the drummer from Little River Band. He had to go and do 2 gigs in Sydney for me whilst I was recovering in hospital. But they were good guys, those guys. And, the other thing we've got to remember about these guys as they've aged, because they're all in their 60s now, 50s and 60s.
And older,
and possibly even older, some of them. They might even be in their early 70s. I know John Money is. John was our tour manager, and I spoke to him only the other day. He's a member of ARCA. See, a lot of these guys don't have ABNs, and they don't have, the taxation records that would have enabled them to get JobKeeper or JobSeeker over the last couple of years. And so a lot of them just haven't had any income through the pandemic at all. And again, it's important that ARCA and the Desk Tapes and Support Act can get behind them.
Yeah, absolutely, and help them out. And it's just, some of them, they're not just surviving week to week, it's day to day, almost hour by hour. And that's one thing I do know. One thing, Bill, I'm looking on here at the great selection that you've got. Is there more that's going to be added to this? Because surely this cannot be it. There's got to be others lying around somewhere.
Well, I don't know what ARCA and Support Act have got in mind, but I mean, they've already got some quality acts. There's us and Men at Work.
Yeah, Men at Work. There's Jojo Zeb, the Crowdies, Doug Parkinson, Russell Morris. Going back, the Ted Murray gang, one from Red Gum. I was only listening to a Red Gum album, a live album the other day, so it's good to see that. Goanna, Wendy Matthews, the Party Boys we talked about, and the Models, V-Spy, Captain Matchbox and the Whoopee Band. I mean, many of the folks listening right now, they will know these. They would have seen some of these bands, but I think it's absolutely brilliant to see, and knowing that it's going to a great cause and helping the roadies, I think is even more important. But there's a few others I'd love to see up there because,
I think hopefully that they'll approach more bands. I don't know whether they'll come back and do another version of Crawl Live or whatever, but because there's other bands they can bring in, and for variety. So I hope they do that because, it's interesting listening back. I had to listen to our gig at Billboard in 81, 40 years ago. God.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention that, but you brought it up.
But it sounds pretty good. As I said, it was mixed on the in-house system by some guy. He's Mackenzie or someone. I can't remember.
Yeah.
He's credited as being the engineer on that particular track. Now, I was listening to it the other day, actually, and I came across a track that I had just written for the band, and we were sort of trialling it out for possible inclusion on our third album. And it was a song called That's Fine By Me. And I'd lost it. I couldn't find a copy of it until I actually, by chance, heard it on this particular tape. Because a year ago, in 2020, I re-recorded that song with a trio that I've got going out of Queensland called the Bilbies.
Yeah.
I've just started to get back and do some recording, and that was the first track I wanted to record again. Did it a bit differently this time, but it was ironic that it turned up on the desk tapes. That was quite a rare track that Crawl never actually recorded but played live.
One of the other things, folks, that I like about this is there's lots of information about the gig, who was there, also the crew, and it's the notes are well worth it. And I guess I reminisce about back in the day when you would buy Aussie Crawl's album and you would sit there and you'd see either the song lyrics or the liner notes and you get some information. And it's good to get some of this as well about some of these gigs and seeing who was there. And as I said, I've seen some names and going, I remember him, I wonder how he's going, and that's just what I'm looking at from my perspective. And that I think this is absolutely a brilliant idea. Knowing it's going to a charity and helping these guys and girls out, I think is even more important. And I just want to see more of it. And I'd love to hear more of these gigs too. So that's one of the things I'll be sort of doing.
Yes, yeah. Well, I hope they do. It's a very good cause.
What was your favourite gig with Aussie Crawl? Can you remember?
Well, look, literally, we did thousands. Literally, thousands and thousands. But there are some shows that did stick out, and I remember them well, and they were our very big concerts. We did 3 at the Myer Music Bowl.
Yeah.
And they reckon there was over 100,000 people at each show. I remember the first time I did that one, we were headlining, and we walked onto the stage at dusk. After, I think it might have been JoJo Zepp and the Falcons, we came on just as, the sky was starting to go dark and the light show flashed on, and the crowd, 100,000 people roared, and it just about hit you in the chest. You could feel the roar hit you physically in your body. And it was quite unrattling, I was a bit rattled at the time, unnerving, I should say. Took me about 3 or 4 songs to gather myself together, and away we went. But that was particularly memorable.
Bill, I know there is some younger musicians that are listening to us. What advice have you got for them? Because, we've just had a couple of years where it's tough, and it probably mum and dad would be saying, you don't want to be a muso because you could be out of work and all that. But you know how it is with people when they've got that bug inside of them, they're going to do it. So what advice have you got for them?
Well, I think it's totally different these days. You could put a band together, you could go out, you could get shows, you could hone your craft, you could get interest, and if you were lucky, you'd get a contract, and then from there, it was up to you. You could become a star if you wanted to. You could have a stellar career. But you can't do that now because there's no way in which you can really do a lot of live work. So I would suggest that they hone their craft in their bedroom. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity with technology today. You've got to be a bit savvy with that and start to record your ideas. Gather some people around you that will assist you, some players, maybe even some co-writers. Get that little bit of a band going, but if you can't play live, start to develop your material and record it digitally, even if you do it in your bedroom. And, you look at Tones and I, that girl from Mount Martha here on the Mornington Peninsula, she's a huge international star. And she just started, as a nobody on the peninsula here, my hometown. And the same with Gautier. He recorded that 11 million selling album in his bedroom at Balnarring Beach, again on the Mornington Peninsula. So it can be done. There are avenues for young people to express themselves and then possibly build a career out of it.
And we love playing their music too. Bill, thank you so much for spending time with us. Folks, if you want to know more, go to the website, australianroadcrew.com.au. Have a look at the Desk Tape series. Have a look at your favourite bands from back in the day. Purchase it, and you know that the money's going to a very good cause. It's helping out some the roadies, the guys and girls who they weren't just the workers; they were family. Because when you're on the road, you become family. You get to know everything. Everything comes out. You end up talking about things and your hopes and your dreams. You all share them, so you become family. And so this is
we were all mates.
You.
They were very different to us because we sort of came from a different background than a lot of the road crew. But, they were like family. They were all part of the one, Australian Crawl family. Without them, we couldn't do the show. And, I remember many of them. Sadly, we've lost a few, but they were characters. I wrote a song about them. It's called Love Boys. You can play it. It's off the... what album was it off? It was off Sirocco, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a song specifically about my road crew.
Well, they were special people, and they still are. So any help we can get to them, we can certainly do it. Go to that website, australianroadcrew.com.au. Bill, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. You have a wonderful Christmas and New Year, and you take care, and hopefully we'll get to see you in the flesh one day soon too.
Well, I'm planning to be touring around. I've got a few projects on the go, so hopefully I'll be in Adelaide and we'll meet face-to-face. We'll have a chat then, hey?
Oh, I look forward to that. Some memories we'll be sharing then.
All righty.
Thanks, Bill. You take care.
Okay, well, thanks so much again for the opportunity to talk.
Bill McDonough, great chatting with Bill. And if you'd like to know more about the Australian Road Crew and how you can help them out by just purchasing one of these live recordings to bring back some great memories, just go to their website, australianroadcrew.com.au, and you know the money being raised is going to a great cause. And keep checking the website out too, because from what I hear, they're going to be adding more and more shows. So you might, some of your favourite artists that you haven't seen yet, that I've got this scratchy recording, and you remember that gig that you went to, it might soon be on there. So keep checking that website out, and of course the money raised going to a very worthwhile cause, supporting the roadies. And as a former one, it's a great cause, let me tell you. But Bill, well, he was the backbone. He is the man that kept the beat for Aussie Crawl, and here's a track from Aussie Crawl, and this is from their show. Now this was live back on August the 11th 1981, and of course this is Aussie Crawl's signature song. Let's enjoy it right now on Flow FM, all part of the Desk Tape series. Go to the website and check it out.
Down with the hostess on the business flight. Taxi in Mercedes drive. I hope that driver's coming out alive. The guy in his Dorset, that lady, she's so corseted. She's got a 15 ways to lead that boy astray. She's one and only, but that lovely, she's so lonely. She pumps in for a breakfast stand, sends him miles away. What a scene, what a performance. you. Good night. See you later.